water spouts, they could be so damaging. But let's not wait any longer. The anticipation is already building from us behind our sort of virtual desks here. So let's jump into the match and see how game one is going to go down, whether there's going to be offensive strategies coming out in play or maybe some really solid synergy. But Rosemary leading out with the Magina and the Regieleki. I have to say Regieleki is one of my favorite Pokemon that has come out of the Crown Tundra. I love it so much. Whereas Adam has gone for the Diancie and the Volcanion here. So really interesting Pokemon coming out from the fray, and I think there's going to be a lot of hard hits. It's going to be a very explosive turn one.
Yeah, very different Pokemon both sides of the field. And Magina, not a Pokemon that we actually discussed much in Team Preview, with that Soul Heart ability. Anytime a Pokemon on the field gets knocked out, it will get a special attack boost, which is very dangerous because of the snowball effect it can have and momentum shift it can have in this sort of game.
Yeah, and we've seen that time and time again. If you allow a Pokemon to kind of run wild on the team and get all those boosts set up, then you're always going to be in a really difficult position to try and stop it. And another way to make Magina even more powerful is to Dynamax it. And Rosemary wastes absolutely no time in doing that here in turn one. Going to obviously double up its HP as well, making it even harder for Adam to be able to KO going forward. Volcanion actually going to go on the defensive for this turn one, go straight for that Protect. Whereas the Magina going to go for that Max Steel Spike, so boosting up the defenses on its side of the field, targeting straight down into that Diancie, going to be dealing a huge amount of damage, as it is of course super effective and picks up the solid KO. Defense boost coming up, and that Soul Heart ability that you mentioned as well, Lee, is about to activate as well.
Yeah, and a really nice combination there. You get the defensive boost, kind of prolonging your longevity on the field, and extremely, making that power outfit that you've got with that Soul Heart to just boost you even further, making you even more dangerous. Really taking the game to Adam here with that turn one Dynamax and going straight for a big knockout here. Now Adam's kind of falling a little bit behind, so it'll be nice to see how he reacts as he does bring that Marshadow on to the field.
Yeah, Marshadow, really interesting Pokemon coming out here. Really cool typing with that kind of ghost fighting as well. But Magina looking so strong. We said at the beginning those boosts are going to be critical, and not only is it special attack being boosted up, but the defense from the Max Steel Spike as well, going to make it really challenging to take down. Spectral Thief, however, is going to come out as Marshadow, able to capitalize on the way Rosemary has played this and get the boosts of its own by stealing them away and dealing that damage to Magina as well. Magina, however, going to retaliate with that Max Starfall, going to come down onto the Marshadow, pick up another solid KO against it. So Marshadow trying so hard to steal these boosts, but Magina's having absolutely none of it. It sort of says, you steal from me, I'm going to KO you. And of course, now as well, Soul Heart's going to activate again, Lee.
It's another activation there for the Magina, and there was the one thing I thought on Adam's side of the field. I felt like he had a little bit of a chance against this Magina, with that Spectral Thief ability. Stealing the boosts before it attacks is a one way to really mitigate those attack boosts and defensive boosts that Magina is starting to kind of gain at the minute. But unfortunately, Magina just showing how powerful it is and why we don't see it too often, because it is just such a strong Pokemon. Picking up a huge knockout again for Rosemary and taking a very big dominating lead here early on in the game.
I mean, the fact that Magina's also in Dynamax, you saw the damage that Scorching Sands did. If it wasn't in the Dynamax, that could very easily be putting Magina into range and dealing a lot more critical damage to try and get that KO against it. But with the additional HP from being Dynamax, it's just really difficult for Adam to be able to KO it. Of course, Adam, though, has access to his Dynamax, so in this kind of late game stage of game one, Zygarde is going to be that chosen Pokemon.
Yeah, and Zygarde choosing to Dynamax here, and we know that Zygarde can be a big threat, especially if it does get its complete form activated. So Magina going to be aware of that, Rosemary going to be aware of it, to try and remove it before it can get that complete form. Sitting at 50% form right at the moment, and another Steel Spike coming out into the Zygarde here, going to boost those defenses but not be enough to pick up the knockout. But I feel like something is going to be incoming here from that Zygarde on Adam's side of the field.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, again, the power of Dynamax, the Zygarde is able to survive that. You saw it do over 50%. If it wasn't Dynamax, that would have picked up the KO. Max Quake, however, going to be fired off from the Zygarde into that opposing Magina. And, Adam doesn't have to worry about it anymore. Is going to be able to get that special defense boost up on his side of the field, which is certainly going to help out against that opposing Kyogre. But we saw how much damage the Thunder did to the Volcanion that already did a huge chunk. An Ice Beam, 4 times effective going into The Zygarde, not actually enough to pick up the KO, but does activate the weakness policy. Oh my goodness, Zygarde could be the comeback here for Adam.
And here is that power construct. This will turn Zygarde from its 50% form into its 100% form, gaining HP back. And obviously with that weakness policy activating, you saw how pivotal that Max Quake was to giving that special defensive boost to the Zygarde to allow it to survive the Ice Beam from the Kyogre. And now in an incredibly dominant position going into these next turns. So this match is not over by any means.
Oh, 100% not. And of course, Regieleki joining the field. Regieleki not known for really having any other offensive moves other than electric type moves, and Zygarde being a ground type isn't going to have to worry about that at all. From Adam's perspective, you can maybe try and target down this Kyogre, stop it going for any more electrical ice type moves, and leave Regieleki there to bounce away and sort of try and do what it can with maybe setting up screens. We know that has access to things like light screen and reflect, so that could potentially be the option here for Rosemary, unless she maybe wants to use that speed advantage Regieleki has, being such a speedy Pokemon, to try and pick up a KO against that Volcanion.
Yeah, and the Regieleki is going to struggle here against the ground typing of that Zygarde. It's not going to really be able to do much damage, but on the other hand, it will be able to do heavy damage to the Volcanion, which is part water typing, and causing a few issues for Rosemary right now. So being able to remove that and just concentrate solely down on the Zygarde is going to be a lot easier for Rosemary. Now, Adam is in a tight spot, so he's going to have to make use of this Zygarde to the best of his ability right now.
Well, Reflect going to be set up on Rosemary's side of the field as Kyogre goes for another Ice Beam. Zygarde is able to hang on, however, and goes for that Max Quake. So, I love the animation coming out from sort of a Dynamax Zygarde. It's so powerful, targeting into that Regieleki, and just picks up a solid KO against it. So, no Focus Sash on this Regieleki, often the item being held on there. So, interesting information there for Adam to have, and Regieleki will be returning to its Pokeball on Rosemary's side of the field as Volcanion goes for that Scorching Sands. Targeting into the Kyogre really doesn't do too much damage at all, but you know, every little bit of chip here is helpful, and it does help reveal the leftovers on the Kyogre.
Yeah, and that's a really nice item on the Kyogre, just prolonging the longevity of it, meaning that it's going to stick around a little bit longer on the field is really nice. The thing is with the Kyogre, if it does, it can now take out, it's outspeeding the Zygarde, so another Ice Beam's probably going to be able to knock it out. The Zygarde probably wants to maybe Max Guard here, that's probably the optimal play, and avoid that damage to maybe take advantage of an extreme speed that we see sometimes run on Zygarde that next turn after it finishes its Dynamax turns.
Well, I mean, the other thing Rosemary's got to her advantage is the speed. Spectria is such a speedy Pokemon as well. And if Volcanion's not able to take it down... Oh, but it does actually manage to pick up that solid KO against the Spectria. I was going to say, it would be in a great position to deal damage as well going into that next turn, but it is no longer around. The Rain has also stopped, so Kyogre is not going to have its Water type moves boosted by the Rain, and also Thunder is not necessarily going to be 100% accurate anymore.
Yeah, the Max Guard there really helping out Adam, you know, they're protecting that Zygarde. Its Dynamax turns have finished, and it maybe has access to extreme speed now where it can get at least one last bit of damage off into this Kyogre before it does go down to potentially an Ice Beam. But we've already seen how effective the Volcanion has been throughout this match, and maybe does it have something in the bag that it can damage this Kyogre with. The leftovers are really showing how pivotal they are right now to survive. It's sitting around on the field and allowing Rosemary just to throw out these big attacks every turn.
I mean, the thing is, this Kyogre, it got the boost from those max steel spikes as well from the Magearna, so things like extreme speed really not going to be dealing a lot of damage. You know, its defense stat is really, really high at the moment. Scorching Sands, of course, coming out from that opposing Volcanion. Again, not going to be dealing a lot of damage, and you can't have secondary effects when the Misty Terrain was on the field in terms of getting any status afflictions, but it's now left the field as well.
Yeah, left the field, so maybe it's able to get a burn, but the Origin Pulse actually coming out and healing up the Volcanion with that water absorbability, so helping out Adam's side of the field massively here as he gets another Scorching Sand off. And like you say, there is going to be the chance that he can get a burn maybe here, which would really help tilt the game a little bit more in Adam's favour. But the Kyogre are going to find it difficult to damage the Volcanion now with just the Ice Beams. Oh, the Thunders, as we're actually going to see, having access to now and revealing.
Oh, it takes it down to just 5 HP. Volcanion able to retaliate with that Scorching Sands. Again, just constantly chipping away at this Kyogre. But as you mentioned, Lee, the leftovers are really helping Kyogre, just able to regain that little bit of damage each turn. I mean, Volcanion was throwing that lifeline there with the Origin Pulse going into it, but Kyogre, misses the Thunder as Volcanion's able to go for another Scorching Sands. I was about to say Kyogre, you know, being pretty accurate with the Thunders, but before I could give it the commentator's curse. Oh, and the burn. Okay, Volcanion is, you know, it's doing some good work here, getting the burn and dodging out of the way of these Thunders.
And just when you think the game is over, the Kyogre misses the Thunder after it's been revealed, and Volcanion gets the burn damage. So if you can avoid a few more Thunders, maybe you can close this game up. But an Ice Beam is actually just enough here to pick up the win for Rosemary, and the Kyogre coming through to pick up game 1.
That was so intense coming down to the end of that game 1. The power was shifting between Rosemary's side to Adam's side, and then, you know, when that Thunder missed, I was in shock. I was like, oh, Volcanion, it can actually find a way back. Oh, it gets the burn. But, I mean, as Volcanion was only on 5 HP, why risk the miss? Go for that Ice Beam, seal up game 1, and now Rosemary's going into game 2 with that game advantage.
Yeah, we saw how dominant the Magearna was in that, and those first few turns, just picking up knockouts every turn. Those first 2 turns, even when the Mars Shadow came in and you used the Spectral Thief to take away those boosts, you thought, okay, this is going to slow it down. It's not going to do as much going forward, but still, again, just picking up a straight knockout there and really kind of making the most out of those Dynamax turns, which it really did. Zygarde coming in, I think it was a nice play, and it's a dangerous Pokemon, as we saw there. It really brought the game back for Adam, but as you say, in the end, the Kyogre just sat on the field from turn 1 and just dished out damage as it wanted to, and the Thunder reveal at the end there was just enough. Like you say, the miss was a little bit worrying, and then the burn to follow that from the Scorching Sands, but just it had enough overall to clinch that one for Rosemary. So a really nice game there from both players, but a lot to think about going into game 2 as well. The Magearna is definitely going to be the big thing on Adam's mind going into game 2, and how to approach that and stop that gaining the momentum like it did in game 1, because as you mentioned, Lou, at the end of that game 1, the Kyogre, because of those defense boosts through the Max Steel Spikes, that's what really allowed it to sit on the field for so long. And if Adam can find a way to maybe mitigate that somehow, make it a lot easier to deal with, and then Rosemary needs to kind of just repeat that again if she can, and maybe just go about it a little bit differently with how Adam might adjust going into game 2.
Yeah, game 2 is certainly going to be an exciting one. And I think that Magearna, you know, coming out so strong as it did for Rosemary, I'm kind of still in awe of how powerful it gave her a start in game 1. And Adam was really sort of thrown onto the back foot there. Potentially, if maybe in this game 2, he leads with something that is going to be able to counteract that Magearna a little bit better and stop it going for all those defense boosts with the Max Steel Spikes, he'll be in a better position to not kind of have to have that last end game rush to try and clutch out a victory.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the Zygarde leads in this next one, because I feel like the Zygarde probably, even though it doesn't want to take the fairy type attacks, if there's some way to get speed control on Adam's side of the field, maybe get that Zygarde moving before the Magearna, then that might be a way. It just feels very difficult at the minute for Adam, and I think he's got his work cut out for him. Magearna, a very strong Pokemon, and once those Soul Hearts start stacking up, it's very difficult to kind of come back from.
I mean, it is a weakness policy, Zygarde, so anything can happen if it's maybe able to survive like a Max Starfall and can retaliate, having those boosts. It could be a very interesting match, but things are certainly changing for Rosemary. We've got the Tornadus and the Regieleki as the lead, and changing as well for Adam. We've got the Zeraora and the Zacian out on the field.
Yeah, Zeraora, another mythical Pokemon, along with that Zacian, which is, again, something we haven't seen so far this game, and a nice option here for Adam, because it gives him a way to deal with that Magearna. But Rosemary kind of thinking into that, probably going to see leads that are going to be not as effective for me in this game, and changing things up with the Tornadus, offers that speed control with that instant tailwind if she wants to, and the Regieleki, which we know is just such a fast Pokemon in this format.
Well, Reflect coming up from Regieleki once again, boosting up the defense on Rosemary's side of the field. Zacian going to go straight for that play rough, however, and pick up the solid KO against the Regieleki. Of course, Zacian has that Intrepid Sword ability. As soon as it joins the field, it gets an attack boost, and that certainly paid off in picking up that KO, removing one of Rosemary's Pokemon from the field in this first turn. Plasma Fist coming out from the Zeraora, but going straight into a Protect from the Tornadus. So Tornadus possibly in a position here where it can go for the Tailwind in the next turn. I mean, when Regieleki's on the field, such a fast Pokemon anyway, you don't really need the Tailwind turn.
No, the Tailwind's a little bit unnecessary there, and it's maybe good to preserve it for this turn where you can make the most out of it and get Magearna in a position where you could almost go for the Dynamax, get the Tailwind up, and really start snowballing the Soul Heart like we saw her do in Game 1.
Exactly, and you know, Magearna back out on the field. Adam needs to find a way to be able to take it down. Otherwise, Rosemary's going to be in such a strong position where she's able to start setting up again, getting those boosts, particularly if the Tornadus wants to set up a Tailwind. But Magearna actually just going to go straight for a Protect here. Tornadus is going to set up the Tailwind, just wants to make sure that things are safely set up on the field. And even if Tornadus goes down, that does give Rosemary the opportunity to bring in a Pokemon from the back and still take advantage of this Tailwind. Zeraora going to go for the Plasma Fist this time. Able to connect. I love this animation going straight into that opposing Tornadus, but going to be activating that Focus Sash. Tornadus going to be staying around.
Yeah, it's hanging around on the field for at least one more turn, which is nice. Now the Tailwind's set up. She's got the speed control on her side of the field. And Magearna now able to go for that Dynamax if it wishes to and start doing some big damage to things on Adam's side of the field. Obviously, Zacian cannot Dynamax, so it is in a position where it could be a little bit vulnerable. But the Zeraora doing nice damage, and there's not really much damage on Adam's side of the field yet, so he's still very comfortable. He just needs to take his time with this, but obviously stall out these Tailwind turns from Rosemary's side of the field, because things can start to get a little bit dangerous for Adam right now.
Yeah, that's the thing. Adam needs to really make sure he plays these next couple of turns carefully. Just because you have the Pokemon advantage doesn't mean the strategy is going to be in your favor. And the Magearna is still at 100% HP. It's still in a great position where it can start dealing out some good damage, boosting up the defenses as required to be able to put Rosemary and her remaining Pokemon into a good position going forward. Of course, she still has that Pokemon in the back yet to be revealed, and it could, of course, be formidable, particularly if it's paired up with that Magearna. Something like the Kyogre coming back in with the rain, able to apply pressure with those Ice Beams to the Zygarde, for example, can be really threatening. And I love seeing this Dynamax Magearna back in action once again. Tornadus going to go for the Hurricane, going to be able to connect onto that Zacian. Does a decent chunk of damage here, but I was wondering if it was going to get that confusion, but no. Max Steel Spike going to follow up from the Magearna into the Zacian though, and we'll be able to get that KO. And of course, Soul Heart going to activate again. Special attack on that Magearna going to be boosted up.
Yeah, and there we go. It started again and taking down the Zacian. The Hurricane actually did a lot more damage than what I thought it would from the Tornadus, and probably putting the Zacian in range there for the Magearna to pick up the knockout. Zeraora go for that Plasma Fist, that signature attack there, but you can see from the defensive boost they're not going to be enough damage. But Adam still has two Pokemon in the back to bring in, so this game not over by any means, but the Magearna is sitting in a very nice position right now where it can start to, like I said in Game 1, start gaining that momentum, which might be a little too much for Adam to deal with.
Well, Zygarde's back on the field, and you know, Zygarde was almost the saviour there for Adam, sort of coming into a late Game 1 situation. So potentially, if he wants to get that Dynamaxed up here and start maybe trying to get boosts up on Adam's side of the field, possibly defensive, sort of special defense boost from a Max Quake, that could help him out against that Magearna going into the next couple of turns. But certainly Magearna's going to be on the rampage here, able to pick up some really strong KOs with its moves, as its special attack does get boosted up constantly by that Soul Heart. And I think you mentioned it earlier, Lee, that it's that kind of snowball effect that can be really detrimental to your opponent's strategy.
Yeah, and one thing that Adam might think about doing here is protecting that Zygarde and allowing the Dynamax move to hit through the Protect, proc the weakness policy, activate the weakness policy, and then maybe max the next turn and take full advantage of potentially 100% complete Zygarde form and the Dynamax on top of that, and it gives you a turn to at least stall out the Tailwind turns as well, which is the other dangerous aspect of Rosemary's side of the field right now as well.
Yeah, well, Dynamax Zygarde going to jump back into the action. And of course, Rosemary does have to worry about the weakness policy on that Zygarde. Hurricane going to deal a huge amount of damage, though, and does get the confusion this time, so Zygarde could be in a perilous situation. Magearna going to follow up with that Max Starfall going into the Zygarde, and it's enough to pick up the KO. Doesn't he have to worry about the weakness policy? The double up is more than enough to remove Adam's Dynamax Pokemon from the field before it's even able to utilize any of its Dynamax moves, and that just puts Adam at such a disadvantage going into the remainder of this game too.
Yeah, we saw how effective the Zygarde was when it did Dynamax in game 1, and to lose it so freely like that almost kind of throws this game right back into Rosemary's hands. All she needs to do is close this one out. We can see a close combat coming out from the Zeraora, but with those the Max Steel Spike defense boosts on top of the Soul Heart boost, it's just a little bit too much. The Zeraora really isn't doing the damage output that Adam needs it to do, and more Shadow going to come in though. It's still got an option to maybe go for its signature attack to steal those boosts and throw them onto Adam's side of the field, so that's something that Adam does have in his locker right now.
I mean, you've got to remember as well, the Reflect is up on Rosemary's side of the field from the Regieleki in that first turn, and that's going to be really putting in a lot of trouble against these physical attackers on Adam's side. Max Starfall going to come out once again from the Magearna, going to target down into that Marshadow and pick up a really, really solid KO. Again, Soul Heart going to activate and get that boost. Not that I think it needs it at this stage. You know, Zeraora also having that close combat will have had its defenses reduced. Going for that Plasma Fists now into that Magearna, just going to do a little bit of chip as the Tailwind ends. But as you can see, Tornadus is still here on the field, still got its Prankster ability, can easily set up another Tailwind if it so desires.
And that's one of the great things about Magearna, you know, it attracts so much attention from your opponent. They have to really act upon it when it's on the field. It's left Tornadus sitting around, and it's allowed Rosemary the opportunity to set up another Tailwind now, which is just not what Adam really wants to deal with, any more speed control. But not seeing that, another Plasma Fist coming out to actually finally deal with that Tornadus and take away that option of speed control from Rosemary's side of the field, but leaving the Magearna to attack once again.
Yeah, and it's able to get that Soul Heart boost as well, thanks to the fact that a KO has happened out on the field. And we get to see this beautiful animation as well of the Flare Cannon firing out into the Zeraora. Going to take it down to 1 HP and activate that Focus Sash. But any other move coming out from Rosemary's side of the field is going to be able to pick up a KO against it. And of course, Flare Cannon going to reduce the special attack of Magearna. But with all those boosts, Lee, I think it can afford a drop.
Definitely afford a 1-drop or 2 as the Kyogre makes its way onto the field for Rosemary. And like you say, the Zeraora now going to find it difficult to knock out both of these Pokemon, especially with all the boosts that the Magearna has already got, the Reflect up as well. Kyogre, and even if the Magearna goes down here, the Kyogre is going to be able to pick up the knockout onto this 1 HP Zeraora as a Plasma Fist is fired out again.
Oh, does manage to connect into that KO and pick up the solid KO with a critical hit. So Zeraora, I think, going to be going out in style here for Adam. Picks up that solid KO, but of course in turn, Magearna's ability so hard, just being so pivotal in this game, able to get a Nulla boost and goes for that Aura Sphere. Going to target down into the Zeraora, remove its 1 HP and claim victory for Rosemary. I mean, what a phenomenal match coming out here. So offensive. That Magearna, what an absolute champion. Huge congratulations to Rosemary.